Right, we'll make a start. So a very warm welcome to everyone who's joined us this afternoon. We're really pleased that so many parliamentarians, industry and academic experts have been able to join us for this session of the Greater Manchester All-Party Parliamentary Group series on levelling up. And today we're focusing on transport. So after a year of lockdowns and tier level restrictions, we know we need to build back confidence in the transport system, and we need to make future public transport the green, clean and affordable option for those travelling both for work and for leisure. It's an important time to get things right for all passengers. Perennial issues around fares, safety, capacity, value for money and reliability all need to be addressed if the residents of Greater Manchester are going to feel confident enough to return to public transport. There's also huge concerns that plans for HS2 and Northern Powerhouse Rail are uncertain, with a need to ensure investment in transport across Greater Manchester to improve connectivity, opportunity and effectively levelling up. Our airport, stations, buses and roads all need urgent attention if we're going to get Greater Manchester back to work and on the road to a green recovery. So today we will hear firsthand from business leaders about their vision, levelling up and what's needed to get our transport system back to work and back up to speed. So in terms of the agenda, the key questions that we are seeking to address are on the screen now. And firstly, in recovery, and as we get back to travelling to work for leisure or for employment, how can we restore passenger confidence? How can we increase journey choice? And how can we make sure that the services are safe, accessible and affordable? What more can providers do to build back an integrated and efficient transport service for users? And that integration is going to be absolutely key if it's going to be successful. What incentives are needed to accelerate greener and healthier journey choices for passengers and businesses? And what are the barriers? What infrastructure investment does Greater Manchester now need to build back better in terms of skills and jobs, and how do we deliver that faster, greener connectivity connecting air, road, rail, light rail, bus and active travel? How can Greater Manchester lead the green recovery and decarbonise transport to reach net zero by 2038? And what more needs to be done to secure a world-class transport system here in Greater Manchester, which drives inclusive growth and a renewal in recovery, but also unlocks the opportunities, the jobs and the skills that Greater Manchester needs? I always say the big success will be getting the kids in Denton trained up for the jobs of tomorrow, and then them physically being able to get across the city region to the new clusters of employment at Media City or at Trafford Park or at the airport or at the city centre. The challenge isn't just getting the skills, it's getting them across the city region. So in terms of housekeeping, we'll run through a few housekeeping points at the start of the session. Firstly, it's being recorded and it will be shared on our website. Please use the hashtag levellingupgm and the tag GMAPPG to continue the debate and share your thoughts online. While the panelists talk, please use the chat function to share your comments and questions for me in the chair to draw from. Panelists should please mute your microphones when not in use, remembering to unmute when engaging in the debate using the raise your hand function to indicate you wish to respond, which can be found when clicking on participants. And then getting on to the agenda, I'm extremely pleased to be able to introduce as one of our keynote speakers my good friend and the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham. Since Andy was elected, he's made it his priority to focus on creating a linked up green transport infrastructure. Some of Andy's recent announcements include plans to accelerate bus franchising at last, delivering more electric vehicle charging points a pledge to complete 100 kilometres of cycling and walking routes by the end of the year, and implementing a new Greater Manchester bike hire scheme. So today it's great to hear from Andy about where we are right now, what the challenges are that Greater Manchester faces over the coming months and years. So over to you, Andy.
Thanks very much indeed, Andrew. Afternoon, everybody. Great to be with you all. Andrew, I'll try and be disciplined and stick to 10 minutes so that we leave some time for questions as well. And I think that requires me to focus on intra-city transport rather than inter-city, because there's so much going on. I think I need to focus on where my main focus is at the moment, which is delivering the B network. So this is the good news. We've now got a very clear vision. And that isn't just down to what I've done, it's down to the leaders of Greater Manchester going back many years who've made the case for taking control again of our transport system. So, you know, it's not just been about buses, it's been about how do we get buses to integrate with the rest, as you just said rightly at the start. And that power is now there. We have used it. And the next few years will very much be about integrating bus and tram as the first phase of the B network. Yellow and black branded system, not your orange and white for you traditionalists out there, Mr. Gwynn, but the new, bringing on the new. But the idea of the B network is obviously very much to say to the public of Greater Manchester that we control it. We don't own it all. Pascal might have something to say about that, but we at least will control it all as different elements of this system come under the B network. And that is obviously a place that we've not been for 35 years. It's a place where London has been, and we can see the benefits of that. And we're now heading decisively in a similar direction. But you know, the B network is bigger than bus and tram, Andrew. It's about bike hire, and you'll see that the bike hire scheme that we confirmed last week with our partner Beryl will be in that same branding. It will be in an integrated ticketing payment system as well. So that is coming in later this year. And also we have our ambitions for rail devolution. And it's really important to kind of see all these pieces of the jigsaw and see how they all interconnect and how they can all be moved forward together. Now, alongside all of this, of course, we have the decision that we took last week to confirm the clean air zone for Greater Manchester, the largest clean air zone in the country. The start date now being 30th of May 2022. See, this is where the alignment of all that we've been doing in recent years really comes together, because obviously that change to road transport also is a catalyst to improve vehicle standards and public transport more broadly across the piece. We've secured £120 million from the government to help people switch vehicles. That is a significant investment. So if you think of taxis and hackneys and private hire as part of the public transport system, you know, I think what we can also see there is there'll be a kind of further move to align standards and make it all knit together. I'm sure Adam from the airport will endorse what I'm about to say. You know, when people leave the doors of Manchester Airport as visitors to our city region, we want them to find, when they walk outside, what they would find in any other second city around the world, which is, you know, a high standard, consistent taxi fleet, which is immediately visible and not the jumble of standards that we have at the moment. And then the same true of public transport, buses and trams that work in an integrated fashion. You know, that is the vision. And we think it's about taking our city region, which is already world-class in so many respects, up to a world-class level on transport, which, if we're honest, we're not at the moment. But we've now got a plan to get there. So that's what we're going to be about. And we have a B network board, Andrew, now that I chair and which meets weekly. So this phase now is all about delivery. You've heard the vision, and I know that I'm under pressure now to make it real, to deliver and to bring this change forward if we can. I've also appointed Chris Boardman as my kind of wider transport advisor. Just so all the parliamentarians on this call know, it's a very deliberate move in many respects. obviously Chris is a very able person who brings fantastic advice, but it is also a signal to the government to say, you know, we need to take the politics out of this as well. And Chris is someone who knows the Prime Minister's Transport Advisor, Andrew Gilligan, very well. You know, it's all about moving to a sort of phase where we are working together to level up transport in Greater Manchester, and hopefully delivered a shared vision. And it does increasingly feel like a shared vision, which obviously is encouraging, because this is a way in which you can make levelling up real for 2.8 million people within 3 to 5 years if we work hard at it. And you know, clearly, I think the government has got a vested interest in backing a plan that can do that. One test I think is really important to set for it. You've heard me, Andrew, talk about London-style public transport, and I will keep using that phrase because it's clear. We need to be clear about what we expect from this reformed system in Greater Manchester. There's an extra bit we need to keep adding to it, which I'd encourage all MPs on the call and all members of the House of Lords on the call, and everyone else actually to add. It's got to be London style with London level fares. It cannot be right in England that public transport is more expensive in the more deprived parts of the country. And until we change that, we won't really make levelling up an everyday reality for so many of our residents. If it costs £4 for a single bus journey from Denton to the places that you reeled off at the start, then there'll be plenty of people in your community who will not be able to take those journeys, to take those opportunities. So we are doing what we can to support those young people that you mentioned. On Thursday this week, the Hour Pass will open again for applications from the year 11s who've just left. So we've extended our pilot by a year. So all of you can tell your constituents that, you know, they'll be able to apply from Thursday. And that's really important, given those kids have suffered a lot over the last 18 months, and we are helping them. But obviously our ambition is a much more affordable transport system across the board. And also not just £1.55 for a bus journey as they have in London, but a daily cap over the whole system, so that you can take as many bikes, buses and trams as you want in any given day across the B network and only spend up to a daily cap. And I think that's the game changer when it comes to the relative cost of public transport as opposed to the cost of running a car. When we can make the overall cost of public transport much more affordable and give people much more freedom in terms of the amount of journeys that they can take as they can in London, then I think we are in the territory of a public transport system that will change people's lives. And as you say, that's exactly what we need, because we are beginning to see clusters of employment across our city region: Media City, Oxford Road, Sports City. You can see this taking shape across the city region, and of course we need to be able to link people to those clusters of employment, as you say, and we have ambitions for the north of Greater Manchester. You know, the Stockport Mayoral Development Corporation, as you know, is going really well, and that is a vision based on the rebuilding of Stockport Interchange, so building for public transport rather than building for the car. And we are now looking to take that concept to the north of the city region, to Middleton, where we again look at a mayoral development corporation linked to bringing Metrolink to Middleton. And that's why we need to think of this debate about transport today in that wider placemaking capacity agenda, because I think we need to think about how improving transport connections also gives us more ability to level up a place like Middleton or other parts of the city region. So Andrew, I'll finish in the last minute I've got, because I am following the time. I've got 1 minute to go before I hit my 10. Rail, where does rail fit into all of this? And you know, the phase I'm describing here with bus franchising is obviously the first phase, integrating with tram. I have asked TfGM to see if we can do it by May 24 to franchise all the buses. But also we've got to be thinking then about preparing for rail devolution in that period beyond. But I do believe we can start with stations. It is frankly a scandal that 60% of our train stations do not have step-free access. If you think about this, you know, what if you said to other members of your constituency in Denton and Reddish, Andrew, with protected characteristics under the Equality Act, that they couldn't use a crucial public service and that they probably wouldn't be able to do so until 2070, because that's the pace we're moving at before we make all of our stations accessible. Sorry about that. It would be an outrage, wouldn't it? People would be up in arms, rightly, but that is what's currently happening. And I would appreciate support of this all-party group for the call that I've made, the deadline that I've set of 2025. You know, the rail industry can't move at its own pace anymore. We need change. They should either make those stations accessible or devolve them to us, you know, and we will find the way of unlocking the funding to get that accessibility in, because we have to have a public transport system that works for all. Metrolink is highly accessible. It's level access at the platform level. We want Metrolink standards across the whole of our system. So, you know, it all needs to be as accessible as Metrolink, as affordable, sustainable, because Metrolink runs on largely renewable energy. And I want, you know, a bus fleet that's running on largely renewable energy. We want it to be reliable so that people turn up, they know it's going to get them there on time. And that isn't the case, certainly not with the trains in recent years. But here's the last point. It's in some ways finishing where I started. Accountable to the public of Greater Manchester. We've not had an accountable transport system. We've got the chance to create one, a system that works for our residents, that connects them with opportunity, you know, allows them to move around the city region with much greater freedom. I think it's a vision worth all of us really working hard across party lines to achieve. And I'll hand back to you on that note, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Andy, and that's given us a lot to think about. And as you know, I'm very supportive of your desire to integrate all modes of public transport across Greater Manchester. That's the only way it's going to work. And I always think when we go down to London in normal times, and you know, I've had an Oyster card for many years now, long before Greater Manchester even started the long protracted discussions about having contactless payment cards. And the fact that it's all seamless, you can start off a journey on Docklands Light Railway, you can continue your journey on the Underground, you can finish your journey on either a bike hire or on the bus using the same ticket, capped fare if you hit a certain amount. It's seamless, it works, it's a no-brainer. Currently, if you tried to do the same kind of journey across Greater Manchester using multimodal transport, people would think you would start raving bonkers, because the transport doesn't interlink. You've got to use different payment mechanisms for different modes of transport. Hazard a guess you'll be stuck at a bus station waiting half an hour or an hour for the connection from the train, or it just doesn't fit together. My question to you, Andy, is how are you going to drive that integration? Because it's easier said than done. How are we going to get the tram, the buses, the cycling, and importantly the rail services all integrated? And that's going to take a lot of planning, because the bus routes that we have now compete with the train routes that we have now, compete with the tram routes that we have now. If you're starting to integrate, you're going to start with a blank piece of paper and work out how you feed into these other modes of travel. So if you can maybe shed some light on that.
Well, thank you, Andrew. It is the big question, isn't it? Because, you know, I make it sound easy maybe, and it's not going to be, is it? It's going to be a difficult road ahead, and we're going to have to ask everybody for patience, because it's a very big undertaking. And it will take some building. Obviously, we're franchising initially the existing network, but then once it is franchised, we get the ability then to change the routes to make them work in a more integrated fashion. So it's going to be a sort of evolutionary approach rather than a revolutionary approach. I think it's important to say, but I actually think it will come together more quickly than we think, because people can. You describe it well. You know, it's obvious what we need, isn't it? And the more buy-in we get from the bottom up, with councillors and MPs feeding in, you know, shaping what our communities want, I don't see any resistance to it. Bar a challenge that we're dealing with regard to the actual decision-making process on franchising. The buy-in is there. The buy-in is there for this across party lines. And actually, I think it's right to say this at an all-party group. Transport policy has been quite contested, I think, for a number of years, but finally it seems as though there's a sort of growing consensus that you have to have a controlling mind over the system, and there has to be public control over the system. I think there is now a political consensus, it seems to me, about that. So we've actually got the conditions here to make change happen without resistance. As I say, in the main part, there's huge public support for what we're trying to do. And so with that, we've got to kind of work with that support and make this integration, as you say, work for people. TFGM have done it before, Andrew. They've delivered successfully in many ways, and I'm confident that they will do it again. But we have created the B Network board to create that relentless focus on this mission, weekly meetings, constantly looking at every element of this. And yeah, it's going to dominate my second term as mayor for certain.
Brilliant. And I might be a child of the 70s and harking back to orange and white, but I do like the yellow and black for the B Network because it makes sense.
That's progress.
It is. It is.
I've moved you on from your traditionalist views.
Andrew Stunnell.
Yes, no, there's too many Andrews on here. We need a bit of coordination, really. Andy, thanks very much for the presentation. It was obviously plenty of ambition. As you say, there's a good all-party take on a lot of this. But it's going to come down to cash, particularly cash post-COVID, when public transport has more or less imploded and we don't know what its future is. So I'd be interested if you could give us some insight on what you think the way ahead is on that. I was delighted to hear what you said about station access. I hope that devolution of that's going to make a difference, but you did have the fund devolved to Greater Manchester before and you still didn't manage to do Bredbury Station. So I will just put in a plea for some of these suburban commuter rail stations where we actually are not in having, the other Andrew talked about a competition of modes. We think we're lucky if we've got a mode. And so if disabled people and people with mobility problems can't use the stations, they really are stuck. So please make sure that doesn't drop off your perspective on things. Metrolink standards everywhere. I think people, particularly in suburban Stockport, would absolutely say, yes, please. What would that look like? We don't have that experience, and doing something about that would be good. And can I ask a question about the bike system? I assume, I don't know, that this is essentially central Manchester, but how soon or quickly will it spread to some of the outer suburban areas? Because I think there would be a very strong appetite for it if it was available, say, operating out of each railway station or transport node or whatever it might be. But as I say, it comes back to cash and it comes back to what the future of public transport is post-COVID, which I don't think either of us will be able to guess at that, but presumably you are doing some scenario planning for how we get the system back on track. So thanks very much for a lively presentation, Andy.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thanks for the support for it. You raised so many good questions there. You're right, there's an immediate challenge with regard to confidence. I noticed that the Mayor of London has said that they will continue with face coverings on public transport beyond the 17th of July, is it? We've got my dates right there. And I think we're just looking at that now. There is a need to keep the confidence building. And from our resident surveys, most people want to see the continuation, I think, of face coverings later into this year. But that's certainly a debate that we're in at the moment, Andrew, and we'll keep the group posted on that. No decisions have yet been taken. I mean, of course, we're also in a position where the government has got unprecedented levels of subsidy in public transport outside of London. So the issue here is persuading them to leave a permanent chunk of that money in. It was a manifesto commitment, so this isn't pie in the sky. We will need revenue support if we're to run a system with London level fares. And so again, we need cross-party support to get that. But I just think there's something really important here, isn't it? We've got the vision. We're going to be the first to go outside of London with a serious effort to create a highly integrated public transport system. I think there's a prize here for a government committed to levelling up in helping us succeed, isn't there? Because then they've got a template they can say to other areas. They've got proof that levelling up is a real thing, but also they've got something else to take to other areas. So we were very much in discussions with them, but we'd obviously appreciate your support in that. In terms of station devolution, I think what I'm advocating is a new approach rather than this finite pot of money, which is never enough for station accessibility. what I'm actually advocating is if they were to devolve them to us, we would use the land and the assets much more creatively, Section 106, etc., to start kind of levering money into the stations, if that makes sense, because the kind of current queue with everyone waiting for their money, and it will never deliver for disabled people or anybody with mobility impairment. In terms of Metrolink standards across the board, what does it mean? Well, let me just give you a simple example. It means street level access from buses, so that every disabled person or elderly person or whoever, a mum with a pram, knows that the bus that turns up will be accessible. People don't have that luxury at the moment, but that's what we want. We would want audio visual announcements on every bus, next stop, etc. That in the long run builds public confidence in the public transport system, and that's where we want to go. We set high standards at the start, and we keep building towards it. On bike hire, obviously we're going to start with Manchester, Salford, and Trafford, because that is the established. We know from the Mobike experience, I can call it experience, other words I could use for it as well, but we'll keep it there, polite today. That's where there is demand for that. There's no question there is a market for it. Media City, Oxford Road corridor, parts of the city centre into Trafford. But we are absolutely committed to taking it into all districts. And you're absolutely right, kind of plotting those in a reform system where you might have docking stations by key public transport nodes, the big interchanges that we've got around the conurbation now. So I think we're aligned, and I really hope, Andrew, we can keep this alignment through the all-party group, because I think it will really help us deliver this vision as we go forward.
Brilliant. Andy, we're already overrunning, but I've got a couple of questions that people have placed in the chat. So if I read them out and then give an answer to them all. So this will hopefully test your memory. So firstly, Claire Stocks has said, who are the members of the B Network board? In particular, I believe there are 2 council leaders. Which 2 are they? She's also asked, great to hear the aspirations and vision. There's an urgent issue that needs tackling regarding walking. 1, please can the Mayor commit to introducing best practice standards on electric charging infrastructure that includes placing it on roadways and not taking space away from pedestrians and people with buggies and wheelchairs? And 2, will the Mayor introduce pavement parking restrictions in order to fulfil the mission to enable people to walk? And Councillor Roger Jones, should we try to link the tram network to all the key employment areas in Greater Manchester? And will the William Shack plan for rail allow for rail devolution in Greater Manchester and the northwest of England?
Great, well, thanks everyone. Claire, I've appointed one, and we're just talking to the other leader at the moment, so I probably better not throw their names out into this space, but we will soon. I mean, it's TFGM, key members of staff, other people are invited to it as and when, and it's intended not to be a secretive board. We will build it out over time to make sure it's got the buy-in. Of course, we still have a Greater Manchester Transport Committee, and it's very important that we knit the voice of the districts through the GM Transport Committee into the B Network board, and we're going to work hard at making sure those arrangements are really clear, so everyone knows where we stand. I really agree with you about pavement parking. It's kind of come over in the last year, hasn't it? How motorists taking pedestrians and cyclists space is just not on, is it? And I think we are able to use pavement parking enforcement. And I think it's particularly important with regard to the B network, so the original B network. I mean, the segregated cycling and walking. To have people parking across cycle lanes is something we're not going to tolerate. The question, Andrew, is one more of enforcement about the pavement parking, and we're just in discussions with GMP about that at the moment, and also councils about what capacity we've got for enforcement. So it's an ongoing issue, that one, and we can update more as we go along. I agree with you, Roger. The tram, the evidence shows that it has a massive impact on local economies where we take the tram to the different centres of GM. So we have now identified Stockport, Middleton, Bolton as the 3 current priorities. I know that Oldham would like to see a further orbital link through the borough. We might be able to do that as part of a Middleton link. You know, I know in Lee they want Metrolink rather than the guided busway, although you know that has worked quite well. I think what we've got to do is keep building out Metrolink, but when you think of buses and Metrolink almost being one system, I don't think it becomes, in a world where we didn't have bus franchising, you know, Metrolink, you have to try and keep building it out. But where you've got buses that you can interconnect with key Metrolink sites and then be ticketed as one journey, then I think, you know, that's part of the solution as well, isn't it? Building the orbital links into a reformed bus network to make it work. In terms of Shapps Williams, it's absolutely the vision that we take control of GM commuter rail services. I mentioned the stations because I think that's something that can be done in the next 5 years. But at the latter part of this decade, we should be looking to take control of the defined GM commuter rail system, not the pan-northern services, but the services that are coming in and obviously supporting the city centre. And they are the lines that we should in time integrate with Metrolink to create a tram train capability. And that's the sort of vision, Andrew, that comes at the back half of this decade, I would say, and beyond. But you know, all of it is very much on the agenda. There's probably more questions in the chat, isn't there, Andrew? And I probably won't be able to.
There is. I mean, for example, Sasha Lord has said hospitality workers are some of the lowest paid and have to take taxis after work. This vision's so refreshing to hear. Thank you. Which I think
London
really
style means later running as well. We barely have any night buses, do we? And when we have run the tram later at Sasha's instigation, it's kind of been successful. So London style, I keep coming back to that. The reason why it's an important phrase is because it implies a world of plenty that we just don't have, both in terms of levels of fares, but also the extensive nature of the services, not just in terms of where they go, but the hours of day that they operate.
And then lastly, Rob Downs has asked about the clean air zone and whether revenue made from this scheme through fines and penalty charging will be ring-fenced for improvements to transport infrastructure, including crumbling road network and improving public transport.
They will, but obviously, Rob, the idea is not, I know it sounds like no one quite believes us when we say it, the idea is not to raise any funding from it. So we are actually after compliance as opposed to revenue. So we've kept the charges very high for breaching the clean air zone because we want people to comply. And when they comply, of course, there is no revenue. So with the kind of size of the funding that we have to help people switch vehicles, £120 million, and high penalties, the aim is to get compliance quickly. And the quicker we get compliance, of course, you know, there'll be a smaller amount of revenue that comes in through fines. There probably still will be fines. There'll be money needed to obviously run the system, the actual, you know, the mechanics of the camera system, etc. But yes, to the extent that there will be any surplus, Rob, it would be used in the way that you described.
And then lastly, before, because I know you've got to go and we've got to move on, but Claire Stocks has said, can you address the electric charging point issue? Because it's a forthcoming tsunami of pavement clutter.
it could be with the bike, because it's a docked bike scheme as well, I hasten to add. So you know, there's going to be bike docks, and many of our new bikes are going to be e-bikes, by the way, which is a positive, I think. But you are absolutely right. They need to be carefully placed and can't kind of just consume pavement space in a way that is unfair on other users. So Claire, we've got a TFGM plan coming through that's being worked on with the districts at the moment called Streets for All. I don't know if people in the group are familiar with it, but it's actually a piece of work we should share with you, Andrew, because the intention is to obviously maximise the use of space so that everyone has protected space. And I think, you know, Oxford, if people think Oxford Road is the template here, where we've tried to create protected space for pedestrians, for cyclists, obviously for road users, you know, we're very much working on that principle, and the Streets for All work is coming to a conclusion. And you know, the point about not taking pavement space that shouldn't be taken is a really important point, Claire, and I'll make sure it's fed in.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for all your contributions, and thanks to Andy for addressing those questions and points. I just remind him I just want a train between Denton and Redditch South, but
you've never mentioned that.
I've never
Go on,
mentioned
tell me
that.
about.
I know. Yeah.
No, yes, I know, Mr. Grimm. I know.
Never allow an opportunity to slip. Well, thanks seriously for your time.
No problem. It's been great, actually. Highly engaged session. I hope some of what I've said has been interesting. I just won't be able to come back to this group enough in the next few years to keep I want your buy-in for what I'm doing. Obviously, I really do, Andrew. So I appreciate this opportunity today. I want you to know, I want you to be able to influence what we're doing, because we need to do this together. And the more we do that, the more it will all hang together, won't it, as a coherent plan. But thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Now, I can introduce our panelists and invite them to give their perspectives and comment on some of the key questions we've identified. And we're very lucky today to be joined by David Sidebottom, who is the Director of Transport Focus, the independent watchdog for transport users, Tim Wood, the Northern Powerhouse Rail Director and Acting Chief Executive of Transport for the North, Claire Hay, the founder and CEO of Greener Transport Solutions, Matthew Galton, the Managing Director of Transpennine Express, Pascal Robinson of the Better Buses for Greater Manchester campaign, and Adam Jupp, the Communications Director of Manchester Airport Group. So let's start with David, if you'd like to give your thoughts on those key questions.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome from sunny Stockport, where I'm talking to this afternoon. Great to be joining you. And just for a quick reminder of Transport Focus, you say independent transport user watchdog, very much a consumer organisation. We gather lots of evidence from talking to people who use public transport, those that don't use public transport for whatever reason, and we use that intelligence to hopefully influence better outcomes for people in the future. And I think this past 15 months, we've turned our attention a lot to travelling during the pandemic, and we'll hear from other panellists about the longer term plans for greener, more sustainable transport and building the infrastructure and the rules and regulations that govern that integrated transport vision. But I think we've got an important first step in this next year ahead, as understanding as people come back to using public transport in the weeks and months ahead. And we've been tracking that throughout the pandemic, been sharing lots of information and data, particularly through the Mayor's Transport Board and with many stakeholders across the city region. And I think what's interesting, just to pick out a few sort of highlight figures really, is that those people that have continued to use rail and bus, and increasingly more so in recent weeks and months, is that actually satisfaction with how safe they feel in relation to the pandemic and the coronavirus has remained very strong. Nearly 9 out of 10 passengers on rail and bus are feeling safe when they come to use it. However, when you speak to those people who have not used public transport about them coming back to using it at some point, that figure drops by about half. That gap's been closing, which is good. I think people are feeling slightly more confident, or groups of people are feeling slightly more confident about getting back onto public transport. And clearly, as we see numbers increase, that's good. That, though, of course, tips another issue in, which is about how safe do I feel on board around space. We've seen lots of good innovations by rail and bus operators about keeping things clean and visibly clean. We need perhaps a bit more done around the social distancing issue, what that means after the 19th of July, and clearly people are telling us that. And it's interesting hearing the Mayor there comment about face coverings. Around about 60% of people are telling us through our research that they will continue to want to see other passengers wear a face covering if social distancing can't be guaranteed. So there's a communication message here about how we get people back into public transport, hopefully beyond the 19th of July. And a couple of quick points just to finish off before I sort of pass on to other panellists. I think it's important that the key bit we want to see in the weeks and months ahead is very, very clear information for people. People tell us that's what they want. They want to know how busy their train or bus will be, and we've seen some operators introduce quite clever technology so you can download that kind of information through apps and websites. And actually just be honest with me, be honest about what's expected of me and what I can expect when I come back to using public transport, and making sure that I understand the rules of engagement in the future. Ticketing deals will be very important, as people come back to some new levels of working from home, working from the office. We saw the introduction of the GB-wide rail flexi season ticket only came into operation yesterday. Some people saying it's not quite the discount that we're hoping for. We've got to start somewhere with this, and we would hope that that flexible product is by nature as well as name, and it adapts over time as people have that blended mixing of commuting and working from home patterns. But the key bit about is making sure, as always is throughout with public transport, is that it's reliable and it's punctual. And that's what people are telling us. You know, I think we've seen it right throughout the pandemic. Keep getting the basics right, keep that attention on delivering that. And I think actually making buses, our trams and trains run more reliably is the best form of advertising for public transport.
Thank you, David. And that's given us quite a bit to think about. Now to Tim Wood at Northern Powerhouse Rail.
Firstly, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to join today's Greater Manchester APPG. I'm absolutely delighted, Andrew, to be here. We are at a critical moment in the North's history, something I don't say lightly. The infrastructure investment decisions to be made in the coming weeks and months may well define our region's future prosperity for generations to come. That is how pivotal it is, and is precisely why we must get this right and why government should support transformational solutions across the Northern Powerhouse network. Manchester, Manchester Airport and the wider region are at the heart of our plans for NPR. The North's final preferred NPR network includes a fully new line between Liverpool and Manchester, connecting the two city regions via Warrington Bank Quay. For the Manchester to Leeds corridor, a new line via the centre of Bradford, unlocking the full potential of that city. And significant upgrades and journey time improvements to the Hope Valley route between Manchester and Sheffield via both Stockport and Marple. That it would just see journeys between Manchester and Leeds cut to 28 minutes. Current journey times are around 48 to 61 minutes, and you're probably standing. And with that 28 minutes, it's 6 trains an hour, each direction. So it's more like a metro system, a turn up and go. Currently today, we have 4 services an hour between Manchester and Leeds. Committed to in full, NPR will deliver up to 14.4 billion in total gross value added per year to the economy by 2060. Around 74,000 new fixed full-time jobs in the North by 2060, and an additional 12,250 seats at the peak morning hour travel. The job market for employers and employees will be widened beyond comparison for what we have today in the region, particularly those in and around the key station areas. Take Manchester, 3.1 million people and 69,000 additional businesses will be within 90 minutes of the city region. This transformational impact will be replicated across the North, opening up job opportunities, attracting investment, and ultimately stimulating the economic growth of the North of England, as well as the UK. Additionally, a new HS2 Northern Powerhouse Rail at Manchester Airport Station will provide faster, more frequent opportunities for journeys and passengers coming into that new station. The impact of NPR means that the number of people within 90 minutes of the new Manchester Airport Station more than doubles to 4.3 million people. That's a quarter of the North's population. Just make no mistake, this is a badly needed piece of rail investment over the coming decades, which will be the North's single biggest transport investment since the Industrial Revolution. All we are left with in the North is just a twin track Victorian railway. So much infrastructure has been removed since the 1960s. It's really a long-term solution as well, just to correct what has become a serious national imbalance in our economy, caused by decades, as I said, of that underinvestment in the North. The impact of the programme will be transformational not only for rail connectivity in the region, but also for the economy, the environment, and for people's quality of life. That is why the government should commit to the full transformational vision for both Northern Powerhouse Rail and the full HS2 route, including to Sheffield and Leeds in the integrated rail plan. Reaching this point in development has been a truly collaborative effort by working in partnership with both the Department for Transport, HS2, Network Rail, and the local transport authorities across the North. We're on the cusp of securing the right solutions that the North will still be benefiting from in 100 years' time. This is why we say to government, we've done this work together, so let's deliver for the North together. The time is now. This is how we level up. In terms of NPR per se, so the North's rail aspirations have been outlined to the government in the form of statutory advice ahead of the IRP's publication, and we do hope that's before the summer recess of July the 22nd. We're calling on government to be bold in its decision-making and not to scale back on the ambition of this long-promised investment that the region desperately requires. The choices made in the next few months will define the North's future for the next century, as I've said, and determines the government's commitment to their levelling up agenda. NPR will be the single biggest investment in transport infrastructure in the North since the Industrial Revolutions of some 200 years ago. A multi-billion-pound programme that will not only transform rail connectivity, modernising ageing and unfit rail network that we have up here, but also act as that economic driver that is really going to benefit the region for the next century. So at the request of the Department for Transport, TfN agreed to delay submitting the completion of the strategic outline case for NPR, which was due to be submitted last March, to give the government consideration and be able to publish the IRP. As I said, we eagerly await that document and hope decisions made about investment in the North Rail network is based on the suite of evidence that both Transport for the North and the DFT have developed in partnership. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Tim. And I don't think we can underestimate the importance of Northern Powerhouse Rail, not just to Greater Manchester, but for the whole of the north of England. And it will be interesting to see what Baroness Vere has to say about the decades of underinvestment in Greater Manchester and why Northern Powerhouse Rail is so important to that. We've got her coming at 2:10, so we'll probably run straight through our current speakers into Baroness Vere. So if we can all try and stay within time limits so we can be on time for the Minister. But thank you, Tim. And we've got Claire Haig at Greener Transport Solutions.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be joining this discussion. So my comments are going to be focusing particularly on the importance of linking the net zero and the decarbonisation and the levelling up agenda, which I think is very much what this discussion is about. I mean, we clearly need to evolve our current transport system from its carbon intensive, polluting, inequitable state to one that's more sustainable and inclusive, which is kinder both to our health and the environment. And all the investment, everything that people are saying around the crucial investment in public transport is at the heart of that. And moving away, of course, from reliance on the private car will also be particularly helpful in tackling our pollution, air quality issues, our public health emergency, for some 40,000 early deaths a year. So all of that's really crucial. I mean, I'd like to particularly focus on how I see Greater Manchester really leading, being a leading example of the green recovery. I mean, I think it's got a leading role to play, not just in terms of its work that it's doing as we're discussing, but clearly in the trailblazing that it's been doing over the past few decades, indeed, to get to the point where we are. So, I mean, Greater Manchester is the only, outside of London, the only area that has a science-based target of being carbon neutral by 2038. That's a big example. I mean, its transport strategy talks around that switch of 50% of journeys to be by sustainable modes by 2040. And really, I think that the key point I'd like to highlight as well is the sort of setting the pace on devolution, which is something we've watched with great interest and has really moved things a stretch. And in really leading the way, I think there's more to do, as Andy was indeed looking at the sort of creative solutions that could perhaps be found with Section 106 on improving rail stations. There's a lot more, a lot further to go, but certainly Greater Manchester has really set the pace and led the charge on that really crucially important area. So just to focus quickly and just summarize, I'm conscious of time, so I will be as brief as I can. We look from our research, and Greener Transport Solutions is a not-for-profit organisation dedicated to the decarbonisation of transport. We see 5 key themes, and I think all of these are being picked up. But first of all, the decarbonisation of transport has to take place within the context of the wider economy. We need a whole systems approach that reflects the shift to digital connectivity, integration of transport, land use planning, energy, green finance, and so forth. So this whole systems. Technical solutions won't be sufficient. We've talked about it, but obviously we need behaviour change, hence that target being so important. We talk about incentives. I mean, absolutely, we've got to get the incentives right. And in fact, more of an ask for central government, we do need to look at replacing fuel duty with something that will in fact take us to a better, more equitable way of paying for road use, as the EVs as we get more EVs and less revenue on that. We've got to ensure this fair and just transition, and the infrastructure investment, we've talked about public transport and a lot that's needed. We mustn't overlook, of course, the crucial role, and Andy, in fact, did touch on the importance of the EV charging points, notwithstanding we don't want clutter on the streets, but it is really important that we, in part of this, that there are sufficient charging points for all households. At the moment, it's inequitable the way the EVs are being rolled out. There's more charging points in the south. It tends to be homeowners that are able to benefit from grants where they charge up at home, etc. So that's also important, along with, of course, improving public transport. But most of all, we must fundamentally strengthen devolution. And as I say, I do see Manchester as the standard bearer outside of London. With decarbonisation, the key thing, as I've touched on with this whole systems approach, is it's breaking down the silos. Coordination is much easier at local level. So we need to reform transport funding and governance so that local leaders across the UK can plan for housing, transport and jobs on an integrated and long-term basis. No more short-term pots of wasteful bidding processes. We've just got to get this right. And because we've seen just the benefits of integrating, for example, better land use and sustainable transport planning can deliver huge benefits economically and also in terms of decongestion and air quality and carbon. So that's, I think, in a way, one of the key messages. If I may add one more, and I don't know how much time I've got, Andrew, if I've run over, if I've got another couple of seconds, are there another couple of seconds, conscious of time? Okay, I'll be really quick. The final point, we touched on the clean air zone. Yet clearly, government has mandated GM to introduce a category C, which is including all of those aspects, excluding private cars, motorbikes, and mopeds. As far as I'm aware, those are still not included. Now, I would say that there might, it's difficult, but there might be an opportunity to link. It would be brilliant if we could link somehow the air quality, the decongestion and the carbon agenda together and somehow bring private cars in. It could be a revenue raising opportunity. I understand that in a way, as Andy Burnham was pointing out, we're wanting compliance. We're not looking at raising revenue, but that's something to think about. I understand that May 2022 is not far away, and it's going to take time to improve public transport for it to really be that sustainable alternative. But that would be my one thought, if we were to push a bit further. And that's the thought I'd just like to leave everyone with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. And moving on, we've got Matthew Galton, the Managing Director of Transpennine Express, some of whose trains are the ones that Tim described, going between Manchester and Leeds. So it'd be great to hear your views on the transport connectivity for Greater Manchester and beyond.
Thank you, Andrew. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Thumbs up if you can. So I'm Matthew Galton, I'm the new MD at Transpennine Express. I'm delighted to join you today. We've heard some pretty visionary stuff from our previous speakers. Greater Manchester's got a proud history of innovating and leading the way, starting with the very first intercity railway in the world, connecting Manchester to Liverpool back in 1830. I'd like to think we've moved on quite considerably since those days, but one thing that links then and now is the value of connecting people to places. And one thing that is very clear as we recover from the pandemic is that people want to travel with confidence. They want a reliable railway. I know that TPE went through some checkered times with regards to the performance of our services. Two years ago, we were seeing public performance in the mid 70%. We're now regularly reaching well over 90%, with the last two periods achieving over 94%. And indeed, on Saturday, we finished the latest reporting period second only nationally to Merseyrail, which is historically by far the best period result in the history of this company. You could see, well, it's easy to achieve that when not many people are travelling. But what I can say is we've been working incredibly hard to improve systematically the reliability of our service offer. Now we're moving to a new measure that means that we want to call at every station either on time or within 3 minutes of on time at every single station. You know, as lockdown has eased, we've seen traditional commuting coming back, but it's quite clear that it's leisure travel that's going to be key very much to our future at TPE. And in fact, leisure could be 14% higher than pre-COVID. Overall, patronage is still only 45% pre-COVID levels, and indeed through the airport, we're only seeing 16% of the previous footfall. We do think the commuter market's going to come back, but it's going to be a very fluid morning peak. Now, clearly in Greater Manchester, where there was a mass transit of people coming into the city, recovery is going to be more of a challenge. We do actually anticipate that many people are going to still be working from home, commuting maybe only on 2 days a week. That said, we think the evening peak will still be pretty strong between 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock, with combination of commuter and leisure traffic. Just picking up what Claire said, people are looking more and more for their travel choice to be sustainable. Sustainability is the heart of our new national rail contract. We've got specific obligation to deliver a net zero strategy for our operations by next spring to the Rail North Partnership, with a target of achieving net zero emissions by 2050. And we are, of course, mindful that Greater Manchester's got a target to deliver this by 2038. The long overdue investment in Transpennine upgrade really is getting underway this summer. We got the immediate challenge of keeping people moving during that. And as an industry, we're working together to ensure that the disruption is to a minimum, and where possible, we can keep people on the train. Tim mentioned the absolutely key piece, and indeed the Mayor did, about how do we continue to get investment into the railway of the North. I'm keen to shoulder up in a coalition of the willing to secure funders with sound business case evidence of why they should keep investing in the North, getting money into our routes, money into our stations, addressing accessibility issues, and even getting new trains. That's what I did when I was at Great Western. I'm very keen to do it here. Andy mentioned the importance of accessibility. I totally agree. We've really got to try and get a step change here. We've been working with TfGM officials most recently on aspirations for Stalybridge. We're involved in an industry task force looking at accessibility issues across Greater Manchester stations, trying to get some early quick wins and trying to get those longer term improvements that are needed. This summer, TPE is going to be looking at how we can expand our network, connecting more places. We'll be coming to stakeholders with our ideas. We really want to grow our business so that we can meet the needs of customers, communities. We can really help you with your local economies. That's something that's really important to me and everybody at TPE. Manchester, of course, at the heart of our network. If it doesn't beat right, the implications are felt right across the North. So very keen to be a great partner for Manchester, understand your issues, get passengers travelling back with confidence, and being an even stronger partner to you in our shared aspirations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matthew. And if we can now move from trains to buses, because whilst we all like nice new shiny train sets, the reality is many more people travel around the conurbation by bus. And for most of us, it's the only option of travel. Certainly in my constituency, it is the predominant mode of public transport, and our bus services aren't what they should be. Something that Pascal Robinson from Better Buses for Greater Manchester knows all about. Pascal.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for having me. I'm going to put on a little timer so that I don't go on about buses all day, although I'm sure everyone would love to talk about buses all day. So just to introduce myself briefly, Better Buses for Greater Manchester is a campaign that has worked for public control of buses here in Greater Manchester. Andy Burnham made that decision earlier in the year, and that is the biggest change we will see to our buses since Thatcher deregulated them back in 1986. And we think this is hugely important and transformative for our buses, because it means that politicians, and by extension our communities, will have control over our public service. Buses should be run for communities. That is what public transport is there for. And so we're incredibly excited to see this. And our priorities moving forward will be to make sure that passengers have a voice in influencing their public transport. That is obviously crucial and has worked highly well in London, where passengers have a seat on the board, but also making sure that staff get a better deal out of this as well. I want to speak to you today about why public transport in public ownership and public control will transform our transport, our buses, our trams and our trains, and why that ambition is so vital. We were asked to speak today about how we get safe, accessible, affordable, green and integrated transport. And the amazing thing is that there are examples all over Europe and in the UK of how this is being done right now. So we know that, as Andrew mentioned, buses make up around 80% of public transport journeys and 59% in the UK. But while they're the backbone of our city regions, they are not up to scratch. 37% of job seekers in Greater Manchester say that transport is a barrier to accessing work, and we've lost 8 million miles of network of our bus routes here in Greater Manchester. Nationally, 10% of hospital outpatient appointments are missed due to transport problems. And I'm going to move on because we don't have time for me to be focusing on all these different issues. But the reality is that we need to follow what has worked. So, for example, in London, bus use there has doubled since the 1980s, and in Greater Manchester, it's fallen by 40% in that time. London has 24-hour green, affordable buses, and people trust them. There are audio-visual announcements. And if you're caught without a working ramp, that bus operator gets fined. And so there is a much higher level of accessibility on those. And we're really excited that Greater Manchester is going to be leading the way, and we hope that other regions will follow in Burnham's footsteps. And we're already seeing that with Brabant, for example. But this extends our need for control over our transport to get the best out of it, extends to our railways too. We see the prices go up and up every year, packed carriages, and companies like Virgin and Stagecoach getting bailed out by the government when they don't make the profits that they're seeking. Our trains are on average older than they were in 1996, and the average price of a train journey has increased by 23.5% in real terms since privatisation. So what's the solution? As I said, not surprising, we believe it's public control and ownership. We would save £1 billion per year. Oh, time goes very fast. We would save £1 billion per year if our trains were brought back into public ownership. I recently listened to a call with a leader in Ireland who was speaking about their transport there. 90% of it in public ownership. They are one of the only 4 nations where public transport is growing. Before the pandemic, they had the highest number of public transport journeys that they'd seen in 20 years, and they are constantly investing in public transport. It was an amazing example of public ownership, being able to achieve a rapid transport system, 7-minute frequency, resurfaced roads, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. service, new buses, and that had led to really increased passenger numbers. And I think it's that kind of ambition that we need to see on our public transport. As Claire mentioned, we face a climate crisis. We face people having been forced to use their cars for the past year. Ambition is the only way we are going to get through this crisis. And that is why I really hope we can work towards public transport and public control and public ownership here in Greater Manchester and across all of the UK, so that it works for our communities.
Thank you very much, Pascal, and also for having the discipline to set a timer. Much appreciated. And then our last panellist is Adam Jupp from Manchester Airport Group. Of course, the airport has taken a very heavy hit in the last 15, 16 months through the pandemic. Air travel is likely to be way off its previous peak as we start to open up the economy again. But it is an incredibly important part of the Greater Manchester economy. It's an important part of the economy for the whole of the north of England, not just in employment directly at the airport, but in a lot of indirect employment. And it's our gateway on the world as well. So it would be great to hear from Adam about how we're going to build back our gateway to the world and integrate that with rail, bus, tram, and the economic growth for Greater Manchester going forwards.
Thank you, Andrew, and you've obviously been reading my notes because you've that delightful introduction was very much the first few bullet points of mine. I think actually, I mean, everyone on the call will know the direct relationship between the airport and Greater Manchester, not least through the ownership structure and the benefits that have flown as a result. But actually, I think over a long period of time, one of the things that's given the city region a competitive advantage over actually not just city regions in the UK, but over those it competes with on the global stage has been connectivity, has been the airport's role in that. I think, going forward, we want that to continue, but we want that advantage to be one that the whole of the North enjoys. And that very much is part of the vision for rebalancing, levelling up, whatever you want to call it. But you're absolutely right that the ONS has actually classified aviation as the hardest hit sector by the pandemic, and we're not entirely clear what the full roadmap to recovery is. So there are challenges ahead, right in front of us now, which I'll touch on skipping through the questions. But also then how that forms part of a recovery and long-term vision for the region. I think the first thing to talk about is that immediate how do we restore confidence in travel and international travel, and there's different strands to that. And one part of it is frankly having a system that is stuck to and works. I think everybody thought the traffic light system was absolutely the right type of system. It was based on risk associated with different travel, but for one reason or another, the approach to the travel restrictions hasn't seemed to follow that system. So we need a system that is clear for everybody to understand and is stuck to. We need non-conflicting and confusing advice on travel, where to go to, and non-conflicting statements from different ministers, sometimes the same ministers on different occasions around what people can and can't do. And then I think beyond that system settling down, we need to a huge part of it is about messaging and about what we hear from authorities and from government around confidence to travel, and we shouldn't underestimate the subtle differences sometimes between this is dangerous unless you do X versus here's how we're keeping you safe to travel. And those little subtle differences can make a massive difference. We want to work together with all partners on that to get us going again initially. Happy to take questions on wider views on the system and what we need if that's appropriate. Another theme, I guess, was affordability. And I think, again, the short, medium term. So we need the removal of any barriers to booking and to the return of services. And we've talked a lot about in the media about testing barriers and the cost of tests if that becomes an ongoing reality. We need to be absolutely clear if we're going to be insisting on PCR tests to low risk destinations, why that's insisted upon, and can there be alternatives? It can't be right that billions of pounds a month be spent by the public on PCR tests when the return rate and the positive rate is next to zero. And if that is just to detect new variants, and there's got to be a smarter way of doing that through government collaboration. And I think beyond that, it's about how we make sure the industry and the UK aviation industry is as competitive versus other countries as possible. I'm sure many on this call have attended the Manchester MP Forum many occasions, so it wouldn't be right for me not to mention air passenger duty. So we'll have the klaxon, but that is something that is a drag on our competitiveness in terms of winning routes in normal circumstances. As we look to win back routes, tax on services that makes routes unprofitable is just going to leave us behind. And I think it also then turns into the things we've talked about on this call. So how does the London-style system of smart travel, making driving prices down, ensuring access on bus, tram, train, whichever way you want to get to the airport, how is that as affordable and as easy as possible? Looking forward, I think a theme that has been loud and clear on this has been sustainability. The question is, how does GM lead on that? Well, I think for aviation, actually, decarbonisation of aviation is a global and international issue. So how do we lead on that? Well, that's about MAG in many ways, being a leader in that field, and we believe we are that. Our terminal buildings were the first to be, carbon neutral in the industry. We've played a leading role in establishing a Jet Zero Council with government to talk about, how we achieve those targets going forward. And we've been, a leading player with sustainable aviation on a carbon roadmap, because actually flying isn't the enemy here. It's the carbon that is, and it's how do we decarbonize an industry. There's movement in the right direction in terms of decoupling passenger growth and emissions growth, and that must continue. And there's been ambitious plans to do that ahead of the 2050 target, which we're at the forefront of. And that's a mix of sustainable fuels, sustainable aircraft, airspace changes. But actually a massive part of it is investment in public transport for lots of reasons. And I think that takes me onto another key point of this, is how does GM build back better? How do we develop the economy? And a huge part of that is realising a vision I think we've all got, which is the North's international gateway at the heart of a high-speed multimodal network that, without sounding too cheesy, is a sort of a beating heart of a northern powerhouse or a northern economy that you might want to talk about. The northern powerhouse rail vision that Tim just talked about will double the amount of people within 90 minutes of the airport to more than 8 million passengers. That widens access to what's already there, and that's more individual routes than Heathrow. That's direct long-haul services to all corners of the world. But really, really importantly, by widening the catchment area, that stimulates additional connectivity, new long-haul services. And what do we know about long-haul services to key markets? Is they bring with them huge economic benefits. They encourage companies that are in the north to export for the first time. And we all know exporting businesses and exporting economies are more resilient and more innovative. They encourage businesses that are based here to not have to relocate to become international, because they can have access to the global markets they want. That means higher skilled, higher value jobs are available here, and people then don't need to relocate and move to access those roles. And I think if you spoke to anybody involved in inward investment, it'd say that when you have connectivity, it attracts global high value businesses to an area, and that brings with it jobs and skills and quality employment. And again, that will all happen as a result of investing in great surface access to the airport and widening the catchment area and stimulating new connectivity. And of course, if you have more direct long-haul services, and if you reduce the reliance on the car to access those services through that public transport, there's an environmental and air quality benefit, because you're removing unnecessary connecting flights that you might have to currently take to get to that place you want to. You're removing the need for car journeys, and that is another benefit to the region as well. I think you also have to look at the other high value sectors that we have, tourism, the university sector. They would all benefit from that improved connectivity, stimulated by great ground transport as well. So I think, in summary, we want to see travel unlocked as safely and as quickly as possible. We don't want to squander the advantage that we have from the vaccination program and let other countries steal a march on us. And then beyond that, we want to send a signal, that we are committed to levelling up, and we are committed to that investment and the investment that will then unlock the benefits of having a global gateway in the north.
Thank you very much, Adam, for your perspective from Manchester Airport Group. I'd now like to introduce Baroness Vere, the Parliamentary Under Secretary of State for the Department of Transport. We're really grateful at the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Greater Manchester for Baroness Vere for agreeing to attend, for agreeing to share the government's plans on addressing the key questions, particularly what the levelling up agenda means for Greater Manchester, with a focus on transport investment, and to respond to some of the issues that have been raised in our meeting so far. So Baroness Vere, you're very welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Andrew, so much. Absolute pleasure to be here. I would love to respond to the issues being raised so far, but unfortunately I've only just been able to join because I just come in from another meeting. So you'll have to ask me very difficult questions, and I'm very happy to answer them. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And really just a few words from me, because I'm really keen to hear from you and also answer questions. But I do think that over the last 15 months, it has shown how successful national government can be if it works well with devolved metro mayors and also with local authorities. It's really brought home to me how important it is from from a transport perspective that it's all very well us making these grand policies, but actually we can't actually really usually put them into place unless we have a really good collaborative working down at the coalface. So I was, really pleased that we've actually, managed to achieve some things during the pandemic. Obviously, a huge amount of financial support has gone into buses and trams and light rail. Manchester has had £222 million in bus support and over £50 million towards Metrolink. But actually, I think as I was hearing Adam talking just now, it's now really got to focusing on really making sure that we, following the vaccine rollout, making sure that we open safely. I'm really concerned, I'm sure everyone is concerned about making sure that people have the confidence to return to public transport. That will be our #1 priority. And I think that, that will mean us working with transport operators to not only tell people that things are running well and that they are safe, but also to demonstrate it as well. So it will not just be about, government and various people sort of doing a one-way communication with the passenger or potential passenger. So I think we're going to have to think of really innovative ways of working together to provide that sense of confidence to passengers as they come back, because we absolutely need them to come back. And we've really got to make sure that we don't end up with a car-led recovery. We don't want traffic to be worse than it was before the pandemic. And so really we are very much focused on the right mode for the right journey. That's why we've published our national bus strategy, and obviously look forward to working with all areas on that. That's why we've got the cycling and walking funding, where we've already committed 250 million, and there will be much more down the line. So what we are trying to do is make sure that we have the right mode for the right journey, and really it's about working with local areas. And I have to say, in general, I find that I get on quite well with Andy Burnham. He's straight, and he will tell me what he thinks, as I will to him, but I can do business with him. We're not the same political party, but that doesn't matter. He does, I think, represent the people of Manchester, Greater Manchester, very well. So I did have a greatly prepared speech here, but I'm not going to do it because I think it's more interesting to answer questions and to hear what you think.
Thank you very much, Baroness Vere. And at the earlier part of the meeting, we had Andy Burnham address some of his priorities for Greater Manchester. And it'd be interesting to understand where the government is on this. Obviously, there are the big ticket issues. Northern Powerhouse Rail is important, not just for Greater Manchester, but for ensuring that the true potential of the entire north of England is unlocked through connectivity from Liverpool right the way across to Hull and up to the northeast, linking the big conurbations of the north of England. And we want to ensure that that remains on track and remains very much a government priority. And linked to that, obviously, HS2 has a huge role as well. South links as well as the east-west links. But then in terms of local transport, ensuring that the rail, the Metrolink and buses are properly integrated into that national infrastructure as well, so that it's not just easy to get from Manchester to Leeds, but it's easy to get from Denton on the east side of Manchester to Media City on the west side of Greater Manchester, because that's just as crucial. And for my constituents, it's probably as crucial as the links between Liverpool and Manchester, or Manchester and Leeds. So it's just about ensuring that these things remain the government's priority.
Yeah, no, thanks, Andrew. Look, it's one of my biggest concerns, actually, that our large infrastructure investment is supported by local transport, because otherwise we're going to end up with a whole load of very shiny new roads and new rail, which actually don't link properly into the final stages of the journey, in which case they're not going to fulfill their full potential. So, I mean, you would have heard probably from several government ministers about, the integrated rail plan. All I can say is that we publish soon. We are working very hard on it. We need to integrate all of the major investments in the north. It's absolutely critical. And what I do know, having been in several conversations, is that unfortunately not everyone agrees, and this is part of the fact as well. Not everyone wants exactly the same thing. If that were the case, we'd be in a much better place. But it is about listening to stakeholders and trying to do the best for every single region. Now, of course, I mean, I presume, I mean, one of the good things I think for Manchester is at least, you know, you have greater visibility on, you know, one part of phase 2B, which is, you know, at least getting there. And I think it was right to split that out, because that at least means, because, you know, it will be probably the biggest bill ever to hit Parliament. And the important thing is it gets the scrutiny it needs, so that when it comes out at the end, we can just crack on with construction. So in terms of, you know, the IRP, I can't really say what you would have heard from other people other than it is, you know, obviously working at pace. But I think the biggest and most exciting thing for Greater Manchester, and the thing that I'm looking forward to working with Andy on, is the Intercity transport funding. So this is quite a substantial amount of money, which we are giving to the largest and most economically important urban areas in the country. And, you know, it's a lot of money, and we are going to need to spend it really, really well. And I think the key, so I agree with Andy, the key to that is going to be integration of buses with your tram services, and indeed with active travel as well. That last mile is also equally important. So over the next few months, that's going to be our absolute focus, because that money obviously will be available fairly soon. And if I was, you know, Andy at the moment, I'd be thinking about what do my plans look like? What am I going to put on the table and say, well, this is what I want to do? And then hopefully we'll just go tick, 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 and here's loads of money. It doesn't usually work like that, because every area always wants slightly more than they can have. But that's really critical for the way forward. And I think that will be a huge benefit to Greater Manchester. And now the key is just getting the money out of the door and space in the ground and putting things in place.
Yeah, and in terms of the airport, you'll have heard the end of Adam's presentation as you logged on. Manchester Airport is such a hugely important economic generator, not just for Greater Manchester, but for the whole of the north of England and beyond into the Midlands as well. And not just with direct employment, also indirect employment. How do we ensure that Manchester Airport and other regional airports across the north of England are supported through a very difficult period, and are able to be that gateway to the world once everything switches back on and a little bit more normality starts to return to international travel?
Absolutely. You know, and from an aviation perspective, you know, we're working very hard on what recovery looks like and how we can help. I recognise it has been the most astonishingly difficult time for everyone in aviation. You know, I hark back to the days when I was aviation minister for about 5 minutes, and I just look now at what, you know, the industry is facing versus, you know, what we used to be talking about then. Look, we remain, you know, committed and supportive of an HS2 station at Manchester Airport, but obviously, you know, that's, you know, conversations are continuing. I think key for Manchester Airport as well will be this Intercity funding. So I think we need to make sure that the airport is fully in the loop on that, and that plans include trips to the airport, because, you know, prior to the pandemic, Manchester Airport was a real jewel in the crown in the northwest, and really we want to see it back to where it belongs. And obviously the government will be looking very closely at what we can do in terms of APD, and how we balance our need to reach net zero by 2050 whilst wanting to support and you know, have a very flourishing aviation sector. So again, that's going to be one of the other balances that we need to put into the mix as we come out of the pandemic.
Brilliant, thank you. And what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to go very quickly around each of the panel members and ask them to just maybe ask the Minister if you had one ask for how we could build back better in Greater Manchester using transport, what would it be, and what would you ask the Minister for? So I'm going to start in the order that we did it in. So David first.
I think linking in, hi Minister, it's David Simon, Transport Focus. I think just building upon that confidence bit, I think making sure the clarity of information for people coming back to public transport is absolutely vital. Integrated or not, make public transport as reliable as possible, and the information about how travelling safe and confident can be delivered.
Yeah.
Tim Wood.
Good afternoon, Minister. For me, of course, it's the publication of the integrated rail plan pre to the summer recess in July 22. or 22nd of July would be very helpful.
Claire Haig.
Hello. Yes, I think my ask would be, can we think about how to replace fuel duty with a new road user charge? Because in the long term, we obviously do need to replace that revenue for the government, but we are going to have a big problem for public transport and overall and congestion, etc., if we don't find a way of making sure that people pay for their road use in a way that reflects paying for use. That's my big ask, really. It's a huge one. It's probably sorry, it is a big one. Sorry, it wasn't an easy one, but anyway, that would be it.
Okay.
Matthew Galton.
Hello, Minister. So mine would be a steady flow of investment funds that enables us to keep doing the right things from a capacity and accessibility point of view, and particularly the funding that allows us to do detailed study work that allows us to unlock the funding. It's not always the grand statements that we need, it's that 5 million, that 6 million that enables us to keep working up the stuff in detail that then makes us come back for the full amount. That's what we need for Manchester. Thank you.
Okay, that's a good point. Thank you.
Pascal.
Afternoon. We would love to see it made easier for regions across the country to bring their buses back into public control, and equally their tram and train networks, so that they can be ambitious in the same way Andy Burnham is being with the bus network here.
And lastly, Adam Jupp.
Well, I'm firstly going to endorse, if I may, Tim's ask for the commitment to MPR and HS2 delivered in full as soon as possible, because I think that sends a real signal of being serious with levelling up. But in the short term for aviation, we've heard about opening up travel for double vaccinated people. Government already knows the benefits of the vaccination programme, and that's possible. Let's just get on and do it and bring it in as soon as we can, because others are already doing it, and we just need to open up that. And we can see other countries around Europe starting to insist on it as well. So we just need to implement what is now a policy as soon as we can.
And there you go, Minister. You've got the Greater Manchester wish list.
I've got a great shopping list from Greater Manchester, including road user charging. Yeah, very good, very good. No, very good feedback, and much appreciated. It's always good to check in with people, see how they're feeling about things, and nothing about this particularly surprises me. So I think that's a good thing. At least we're aware.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Baroness Vere, for your time this afternoon and for answering your questions. I mean, clearly, transport is going to be the linchpin for the whole building back, levelling up agenda in Greater Manchester. I always say it's great that we've got an employment strategy. It's great that we've got a housing strategy. It's great that we've got a skills strategy for Greater Manchester. But the real challenge is ensuring that all of that is joined up with a proper transport strategy, so that the kids that are in the constituency that I represent have the chances of the job creation on the other side of the city region, or indeed in another city region. They can physically get there. Transport is absolutely the linchpin for the whole of the levelling up agenda, and we're very grateful for your time today at the all-party parliamentary group for Greater Manchester. Thank you.
No problem at all, Andrew. And you know what? I agree with you.
There you go. A bit of cross-party consensus.
Yeah, transport is the enabler for everything.
We might actually get somewhere with it then. Brilliant. Thank you very much. And can I also thank the other panellists as well for attending today. I think it's been great to hear so many different views from across the sector and how we can address the key issues and priorities for Greater Manchester. I think it's also great that we've got some consensus there as well from the Minister, the Mayor, and myself as a Labour Member of Parliament, and Andrew Stunnell as a Liberal Democrat peer as well. I'd like to thank Devo Connect for organising this meeting and for acting as Secretariat to the APPG. If there's anything that any of the participants want to raise further, please do get in touch with them at appggm@devoconnect.co.uk, and they'll make sure that it's answered or passed on to somebody who can answer. Want to thank everybody who attended today. Hopefully see you all at the next session. We're also planning an additional session, hopefully with Baroness Hughes and possibly the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester, to talk about some of the challenges in ensuring that Greater Manchester Police gets to where we want it to be, and a little bit of scrutiny from parliamentarians will hopefully help that agenda along the way. So please keep a lookout for that additional meeting as well, where hopefully, as I say, we will have the Deputy Mayor for Policing and the Chief Constable. But all that's left for me to say is thanks to everyone who attended today, and hopefully, as I say, we'll see you at the future sessions before summer recess. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.